The sun beat down like an anvil over the cracked earth of the savannah, and the air shimmered above the dust, thick with tension and the scent of fear. The clash came suddenly, no warning, no signal, just the thunderous sound of hooves tearing into the ground as the great buffalo, known by locals as Baraku, charged toward the older, towering bull-elephant grazing near the acacia grove. Baraku was massive, broad-shouldered, black as midnight and carved with age-worn scars. But what made him feared was not his size. It was the fire in his eyes, something beyond rage, something ancient and untamed. The elephant, caught off guard, trumpeted and turned just in time to catch the full weight of Baraku's assault, tusks scraping earth as he stumbled back. Dust exploded into the air. Shouts erupted. A group of local herders, barefoot and shirtless, with long sticks and faded red cloths wrapped around their heads, came running from the river bend. They waved their arms, screamed in fear, not for the elephant, but for Baraku, whose sudden fury was unlike anything they had seen. The clash of titans rocked the dry plain. The elephant reared up, trying not to trample the shouting men, while Baraku pressed on, relentless, his massive horns pushing, his hooves digging deep into the soil, not letting up. This wasn't hunger or defense. This was a storm in the heart of a beast that had held too much for too long. A boy, no older than 12, with wide eyes and a slingshot in hand, stared from behind a termite mound, recognizing Baraku from stories, once a gentle leader of a herd that had vanished 2 dry seasons ago in a fire started by poachers. People said he'd gone mad since. But now, the men encircled the 2 creatures, not with weapons, but with voices, chanting, calling, whistling, beating their sticks rhythmically on the ground. The elephant, puzzled and bleeding from a bruised shoulder, backed away slowly, eyes never leaving Baraku's. But the buffalo didn't follow. His breaths came ragged and uneven. His legs trembled. Something shifted in him as the chants filled the air, not fear, but memory. He stepped back once, then again, and stood, head low, as the elephant disappeared beyond the trees. The men exhaled. One, a tall man with gray in his beard, approached Baraku slowly. He held out a hand, whispering in the old tongue, a song of peace. Baraku didn't move. The man placed something on the ground, ripe melons, cracked open to reveal their red, glistening hearts. A risky offering. The buffalo stared, then lowered his head and ate. The men relaxed. One boy reached out and brushed the animal's side. Baraku flinched, but didn't strike. The touch lingered. Something melted. The fury did not vanish, but it shifted, folded deeper beneath the hide, behind the eyes. They named him the one who remembers. Days passed. Baraku lingered near the human camp, never entering, but always visible at dusk. They fed him when they could. He never threatened again, but he never truly belonged. Then, one morning, hoofprints were found near the lower marsh, not from cattle or gazelle, but from another buffalo. A young one. Injured. Alone. Baraku followed the scent. The locals followed him, distant but curious, not knowing why he searched, or what he sought in the tall, whispering grass of the forgotten plains. And as the wind picked up and the sky began to turn, a new storm, one not of fury, but of reckoning, began to gather around the beast who had once tried to destroy, and now stood at the edge of something far greater than rage, forgiveness. Follow Baraku's path in the next part, as he journeys beyond instinct and becomes more than just a beast. Subscribe for more stories of extraordinary bonds in the wild. The sun had barely risen when Baraku's hooves touched the damp grass at the edge of the lower marsh, his silhouette tall and solemn against the misty horizon. The same buffalo who had once been fire and thunder now moved like a shadow, remembering its shape, each step deliberate, drawn forward not by hunger or fear but something older, recognition, perhaps, or guilt braided with hope. The boy with the slingshot, now always nearby and known among the herders as Tembo, watched from a distance, not daring to call out or move closer, sensing that this journey was not his to lead, only to witness. Baraku sniffed the air, his wide nostrils flaring with each breath, picking up the faint traces of a scent he hadn't smelled in years. Young blood, not fresh but not gone, pain laced into the earth, trampled reeds bending where something small and heavy had stumbled. A calf. Maybe. Lost, injured, maybe left behind by a panicked herd or orphaned by a hunter's bullet. Baraku moved faster now, through tall grass that clung to his scarred flanks, past dragonflies hovering like spirits over dark water, deeper into the marsh where even the herders rarely stepped. Then he heard it, a sound so faint, so strangled by silence it barely qualified as a cry, more like a memory of one, a low, rasping moan carried on the wind. He froze. Listened. Again. There. Beneath the roots of a fallen acacia, its branches twisted like broken ribs, lay a calf, no more than a few weeks old, trembling, coated in filth, its left hind leg bent unnaturally, eyes wide and unblinking. Baraku approached, slowly, lowering his massive head until his nose brushed the wet ground beside the calf. The little one didn't flinch. It barely breathed. And something in that stillness, in that acceptance of pain, shattered something within Baraku he didn't know still remained. A memory bloomed unbidden, his own calf, long lost to smoke and fire, body never found, only the smell lingering in the ashes of the burned grasslands they once roamed. He had carried that grief not like a burden, but like armor, layered thick around his soul, until now. He touched the calf gently with his horn, then nudged it upright. Nothing. Again. A faint gasp. Life. He stood over it, shielding it from the morning wind. Hours passed. Tembo watched from the ridge above, clutching the old man's walking stick he had borrowed without asking, unable to look away. When the men arrived later that day with ropes and waterskins, expecting perhaps a wounded leopard or dying cow, they stopped dead at the sight. Baraku, standing motionless over the small calf like a statue carved from obsidian, his eyes flicking to the humans but showing no fear, only warning. Not this one. Not now. One of the men, a younger ranger named Elias who had once seen Baraku chase off a lion from a waterhole, approached slowly, whispering low, speaking to both buffalo and child as if to calm ghosts. They gave the calf water with a hollowed gourd, its lips twitching weakly around the rim. Baraku didn't move until the calf had drunk its fill. Then, as the sun dipped low and the frogs began to sing, he lay beside it. That night, around the herder's fire, they spoke of the buffalo as something new. Not a beast, not a curse, but a guardian sent by the land to repay a debt or rewrite a fate. The old man, Tembo's grandfather, muttered a word they hadn't used in decades, Mkalimoyo, the fierce-hearted. In the days that followed, Baraku walked with the calf beside him, slowly, carefully, often pausing to let it rest, its injured leg dragging like a tether. He led it not to the herd but toward the high cliffs near the river basin, where grass grew thick and soft and the world was quiet. Each night, he would stand watch as the calf slept beneath the stars. Each day, he would graze just far enough to be close if needed. And though he never made a sound, the way he moved, the way he watched, told stories more ancient than words. One morning, a group of tourists wandered too close, cameras clicking, laughing until Baraku turned his head and stared. They stopped. A silence fell. Then they left, quietly, shaken without knowing why. The ranger Elias, who had begun visiting daily, noticed something else too. The calf, though limping, had started to rise on its own, its eyes more alert, its ribs less pronounced. It even tried to nudge Baraku's flank once, and though the older buffalo didn't react, a slow blink revealed more than any gesture. Still, peace was a fragile thing on this land. One evening, a distant crack shattered the sky. Not thunder, but a rifle, far off yet close enough to taste the echo. The herders grew tense. Poachers, perhaps. Or frightened farmers. Elias tightened his patrols. Tembo stayed home. Baraku didn't move from his post. Until one night, when the calf failed to return from a short graze near the river's edge. Panic didn't come to Baraku like it would to other animals. It arrived silently, hollowing him from the inside, sharpening his senses until every leaf, every scent, every breath of wind felt like a scream. He searched until morning. Then he found the blood, not much, but enough. And hoofprints. Human. Not the kind that led to safety. They led to the old railway, where rusted cars sat half buried in sand. And in that moment, the fire returned, Not blind rage, but something colder. Something precise. He followed. Past the brush. Past the river. Past the broken skeletons of train cars and into the edge of the thorns where no buffalo dared go. He didn't know what he'd find. But he knew what he'd do. Baraku was no longer just a creature of the land. He had become its memory, its sorrow, its justice. And he was not going to lose another calf. Not to fire, not to man, not to anything this world could summon. In the next part, follow Baraku's journey into enemy territory and the moment that will test whether mercy can survive in a heart built on pain. Baraku moved through the dense thicket surrounding the derelict railway with a cautious yet relentless purpose, his massive frame weaving silently between thorny acacia branches that clawed at his hide but never slowed him. The air was thick with the scent of rust and decay, mingling with the musk of wild animals and the faint trace of smoke from distant fires. His ears twitched, alert to every sound, the distant calls of hyenas, the rustling of small creatures, and the low, urgent murmurs of men not far beyond the scraggly trees. The calf's blood had stained the cracked earth, a cruel reminder of the fragility of life amid the savannah's brutal truths. Baraka's heart thundered, not with the mindless fury of a beast driven by instinct, but with a sharp, focused resolve born from years of loss and survival. As the sun dipped low behind the hills, casting long shadows that stretched like fingers over the land, Baraku found himself face to face with a group of men, poachers, huddled around a fire near a rusted cargo car. Their chatter was harsh, punctuated by laughter and the sharp click of weapons being readied. Among them lay the calf, weak but alive, tied roughly with coarse rope. The sight ignited something primal in Baraku, but he held himself back, muscles coiled like springs, eyes burning with a mix of anger and sorrow. These men represented more than just a threat to the calf. They were the embodiment of a world that had long turned its back on the wild. Baraka's breath came heavy, nostrils flaring as he silently circled, searching for an opening, a weakness in their careless defense. Suddenly, a twig snapped beneath his weight, and the men turned, rifles raised. For a heartbeat, tension cracked the air like a snapped bowstring. Then the leader, a grizzled man with a scar running down his cheek, laughed, waving his comrades to stand down. "What's a buffalo doing here? You lost beast," he jeered. Baraka's response was a low, guttural rumble that echoed across the barren yard, a sound that seemed to shake the very ground beneath their feet. Without warning, he charged, a living mountain of muscle and wrath, crashing through the firelight with a force that sent men stumbling and rifles clattering. The poachers scattered, but Baraku was relentless, aiming not to kill but to disable, his horns gouging the ground, his hooves kicking up dirt and debris. Yet amidst the chaos, something unexpected happened. A young man, no more than 20, stood frozen, eyes wide with fear and something else, regret? When Baraka's great head swung close, the youth dropped his rifle, raising trembling hands in surrender. The leader barked orders to retreat, but the young man lingered, his gaze fixed on the buffalo with a silent apology. As the men fled into the shadows, Baraku approached the calf, lowering his massive head gently as if to reassure. The calf whimpered, weak but alive, eyes flickering with a fragile spark of hope. Baraka's instincts told him to leave, to protect himself, to retreat, but the calf needed him. The wild was unforgiving, yet in that moment, it was also a cradle of compassion. The next days were a test of endurance. Baraku and the calf navigated the shifting landscape, seeking refuge in hidden groves and waterholes while avoiding the expanding reach of humans. The calf's injury slowed them, forcing Baraku to carry the burden of survival not just for himself but for another. The seasons changed, and so did Baraku. The fury that had once defined him gave way to a quiet strength, one that embraced vulnerability as much as power. Yet the human world remained a looming shadow. One afternoon, as they rested beneath the giant baobab tree, a ranger arrived, Elias, the young man who had once seen Baraka's fury and now approached with cautious respect. Elias knelt beside the calf, his hands gentle as he examined the wound, whispering promises in a language older than the land itself. Baraku watched, silent and still, trusting this stranger despite the memories etched deep within him. The ranger's care brought healing, and in return, Baraku offered protection, standing guard over the camp with a vigilance born of love and loss. But the peace was fragile. The scarred leader of the poachers returned, driven by greed and vengeance, accompanied by a larger crew armed with traps and rifles. They saw Baraku as an obstacle, a beast to be broken or killed, and the calf as nothing more than a prize. The confrontation was inevitable. On a moonlit night, the poachers crept into the grove, setting snares and bait, their whispers cold as the wind. Baraku sensed the danger, his muscles coiling, eyes sharp. When the trap sprung, and the calf cried out in pain, Baraku charged through the darkness, horns lowered like a battering ram. The battle that followed was fierce and desperate, a clash not just of strength, but of wills. Baraku fought with the fury of the storm, each movement a declaration that love and loyalty could not be tamed by cruelty. The poachers were driven back, some fleeing into the night, others caught in their own traps. Yet the cost was high. Baraku's flank was pierced by a bullet, and blood darkened the earth beneath him. As dawn broke, Elias and the herders found the buffalo wounded but alive, standing over the calf, whose injury was now bandaged but still tender. The young man knelt beside Baraku, whispering words of gratitude and hope. In that quiet moment, a bond was sealed, not just between man and beast, but between two worlds struggling to coexist. Baraku's journey was far from over, but the fire in his heart burned brighter, fueled not by rage, but by a profound courage, the courage to protect, to forgive, and to believe in a future where strength was measured not by dominance, but by compassion. Stay with us for the next chapter as Baraku faces new trials, and the lines between wild and tame blur in a story that challenges what it truly means to be a guardian. The days stretched thin like the cracked earth beneath Baraku's heavy hooves, but the buffalo's spirit held firm, even as his wound throbbed and the calf beside him slowly regained strength, each tentative step a small victory carved from pain. The once desolate marshland now hummed with life. Crickets chirped beneath the moon, and the wind stirred the tall grasses, whispering secrets that only the wild could understand. Yet peace remained a fragile dream, for human encroachment was relentless. Elias and the herders worked tirelessly, creating makeshift barriers and safe zones, but the poachers' shadow loomed, their greed undiminished by past defeats. One evening, as the sun sank behind distant hills and painted the sky in hues of blood and amber, a sudden storm rolled over the plains, dark clouds roaring like ancient beasts awakened. The rain fell hard, transforming the earth into a slick, treacherous mire. Baraku sensed danger, not just from the storm, but from the swelling river that threatened to flood the valley, swallowing everything in its path. The calf, still fragile, whimpered, frightened by the pounding rain and the relentless wind. Baraku pressed close, his massive body shielding the young one from the worst of the storm's fury. Hours passed, the tempest tearing through the land, trees bending, lightning splitting the sky, and the river swelling beyond its banks. As dawn broke, the world was transformed, a vast sea of muddy water where once stood grass and soil. The camp was gone, washed away by the flood, and Elias's voice carried over the water, calling out, desperate and strained. Baraku, despite his injury, plunged into the rising torrent, the cold water stinging but his resolve unshaken. He found Elias clinging to a fallen tree, exhausted but alive, and together they made for higher ground. The calf followed closely, struggling but determined. The flood forced a reckoning. The savannah was no longer safe, and the animals and people would have to find refuge elsewhere. Baraku led the small group, herders, Elias, the calf, and himself, through unfamiliar terrain, guided by instinct and the whispering winds. Along the way, they encountered other creatures displaced by the flood, a lone cheetah nursing a wounded paw, a flock of startled flamingos, and a family of warthogs scrambling for dry land. Baraku's presence was a beacon. His calm strength calmed the frightened animals, and even the humans found courage in his steady pace. One night, beneath a canopy of stars, Elias shared his story. How he had lost his family to a wildfire years ago, how the wilderness had once been a place of pain for him, until Baraku had shown him the true meaning of resilience and compassion. Tembo, now a young man with fire in his eyes, listened silently, the weight of his grandfather's wisdom mingling with his own newfound respect for the buffalo. The journey was long and perilous. Poachers had not given up. Traps and snares lay hidden along the path, designed to catch any straggler, and the threat of human violence was a constant shadow. But Baraku was vigilant, sensing every movement, warning the group with low, guttural calls. As they neared a high plateau overlooking the river's new course, the group was ambushed. Poachers, armed and desperate, emerged from the scrub with rifles raised. A fierce battle erupted, but Baraku, despite his still healing wound, charged into the fray with a roar that shook the earth. The humans rallied around him, inspired by his bravery and determination. Together, they drove the poachers back, but the cost was high. Elias was struck in the leg, and the calf stumbled, its energy waning. In the aftermath, as the sun rose over the scarred landscape, Baraku stood over Elias and the calf, the three bound by a fierce loyalty stronger than fear or pain. The ordeal had changed them all. Elias's injury forced him to slow down, but his spirit was unbroken, and Tembo stepped forward, ready to carry the torch of their shared mission, to protect the wild and the creatures within it. Baraku, once a symbol of fury and loss, had become a guardian, a living testament to the power of love, sacrifice, and hope amid chaos. Yet the journey was far from over. The flood had altered the land, the poacher's threat persisted, and the bond between man and beast faced new challenges as they ventured toward a distant sanctuary rumored to be safe, a place where the wild could breathe freely, and where Baraku's legacy might truly begin. Join us for the next chapter, where the boundaries between predator and protector blur, and where the true test of courage awaits beneath the endless sky. ChatGPT. The trek toward sanctuary stretched before them like an endless ribbon of uncertainty, the cracked earth beneath their hooves and feet still soaked from the floodwaters that had reshaped the landscape, carving new gullies and drowning ancient paths. Baraku moved steadily, his great body marked by scars both old and new, the pain from his wound a constant reminder of the cost of survival, yet he bore it with quiet dignity, refusing to show weakness before the calf and the humans who had become entwined in his fate. Elias hobbled beside Tembo, leaning heavily on a makeshift staff, his face pale but resolute, the fierce glint in his eyes undimmed by injury. The calf, growing stronger each day, walked with wobbly determination, its eyes bright with the tentative spark of life returning. As they advanced through the altered savanna, the signs of human cruelty were everywhere, rusted snares hidden beneath tangled grasses, broken traps discarded like refuse, and the lingering scent of smoke and sweat marking poachers' camps long abandoned or hurriedly vacated. But Baraku, the once maddened beast now tempered by love and loyalty, led with a wisdom born from years of hardship, his keen senses alert for every threat, his deep grunts communicating warnings and reassurance in equal measure. One afternoon, as the sun hung high and merciless in the sky, a sudden, sharp cry shattered the stillness, a sound not of the wild, but human, a desperate scream carried on the wind. The group froze. The calf pressed close to Baraku's side. Elias winced, gripping his wound. Tembo scanned the horizon, eyes narrowing. Then, through the haze of heat and dust, they spotted a figure, a young woman, stumbling and limping, her clothes torn and stained, a faint blood trail marking her path. Without hesitation, Baraku thundered forward, his powerful legs eating the distance between them with astonishing speed. The woman fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face as she looked up into the enormous eyes of the buffalo, eyes filled not with menace, but something profoundly gentle. Elias and Tembo rushed forward, helping her to stand, her voice trembling as she told her story. A ranger like Elias, separated from her team during a poacher's ambush, lost and hunted through the wilds, fearing she would never see her family or home again. Baraku's presence was a shield, a guardian spirit incarnate. Together, they moved cautiously, guided by the woman's knowledge of the land and Baraku's instinctive mastery of its secrets. Along the way, the group encountered the scars of war between man and nature, the carcass of a lion, caught in a cruel snare, a grove of ancient baobab trees, their bark scorched by careless fire, and a river choked with plastic and waste, a silent testament to a world that had forgotten the delicate balance of life. The woman, whom they named Amina, brought a new strength to the group, her determination to fight for the wild echoing Elias's own scars and hopes. Baraku seemed to recognize a kindred spirit in her, often lingering near, allowing her to stroke the coarse hairs along his massive neck. Yet, even as they moved forward, the threat of poachers grew. One night, under a silver moon, the camp was attacked, a horde of men armed with rifles and traps, their faces masked, voices cruel and triumphant. The battle was brutal and chaotic. Baraku charged into the fray once more, his horn a battering ram against the intruders, but this time he was not alone. Elias, Tembo, and Amina fought alongside him, their unity a force greater than any one of them alone. The poachers were driven back, but at a cost. The calf was struck, collapsing amidst the chaos, its breaths shallow and quick. Baraku stood guard, his massive form a living shield, while Amina and Elias tended to the wound with the last of their supplies. As dawn broke, casting a pale light over the blood-stained earth, the group made a difficult decision. They would press on, seeking the sanctuary rumored to lie beyond the eastern ridge, a place protected by law and legend, where the wild could thrive without fear. Baraku led the way, each step heavier but no less determined, the calf nestled close in a sling fashioned by Amina's deft hands. The journey ahead was fraught with peril and uncertainty, yet in the quiet moments between the storms, a fragile hope took root, a hope that love and courage could mend even the deepest wounds, that the heart beneath the horns could beat with mercy in a world scarred by violence. In the next chapter, witness Baraka's final stand and the awakening of a new bond between man and nature, as the fight for survival becomes a fight for redemption. ChatGPT. The wind carried the scent of wildflowers and distant rain as Baraku and his small company crept toward the eastern ridge, the land shifting beneath their feet from soggy marshes to dry, cracked earth, each step weighted by the burdens of past battles and the fragile hope of sanctuary. The calf, still weak but steadily gaining strength, nestled in the sling woven by Amina's skilled hands, while Elias hobbled alongside Tembo, their eyes scanning the horizon for signs of danger or refuge. The silence between them was thick, filled with unspoken fears and the ever-present hum of insects and distant birdsong. Baraka's heavy breaths mingled with the soft rustle of grass as he moved steadily forward, his muscles taut and his mind sharp despite the ache in his side from the lingering wound. The world felt poised on the edge of a storm, unpredictable, charged with tension, and yet filled with the quiet promise of renewal. As the sun dipped low one evening, casting long shadows across the rolling hills, the group finally glimpsed the edge of the sanctuary, a sprawling reserve bordered by ancient trees and protected by a high fence topped with wire, a place whispered about by local tribes and conservationists alike. Relief surged through them, a balm to weary bodies and wounded souls. But that night, under a canopy of stars and the watchful eyes of owls, a new challenge arose. A pack of hyenas, emboldened by hunger and curiosity, circled the camp, their eerie laughter slicing through the night like knives. Baraka rose, his massive form silhouetted against the moonlight, and faced them with the steady calm of a king defending his realm. The hyenas snarled, their yellow eyes gleaming, but Baraka's presence was a barrier, a storm of raw power tempered by unwavering resolve. With a mighty bellow that echoed through the valley, he charged, scattering the pack into the shadows. The calm returned, and the group settled beneath the flickering firelight, the calves breathing steady now, a quiet victory after the night's ordeal. Dawn broke with a rosy glow, and the group approached the sanctuary gates, greeted by a ranger team led by a woman named Nia, whose compassionate eyes and steady hands welcomed them with open arms. She had heard of Baraka's tale, the buffalo who defied odds, fought poachers, and protected a vulnerable calf, and saw in him a symbol of hope and resilience. The gates opened, and Baraku stepped inside, his hooves echoing on the gravel path, the calf beside him, Amina and Elias close at hand, and Tembo bringing up the rear with a newfound sense of purpose. Inside the sanctuary, the land breathed anew, grasses lush and green, waterholes sparkling in the sunlight, and animals moving freely without fear. Baraku found a quiet grove where ancient baobabs stood tall, their twisted branches reaching for the sky like the hands of the earth itself. Here he rested, his body weary but his spirit renewed. The calf began to roam, tentatively at first, then with growing confidence, its steps a testament to survival and the power of care. But even in sanctuary, challenges persisted. Disease threatened the herd, and tensions flared between resident animals and newcomers displaced by floods and human activity. Elias and Amina worked tirelessly alongside Nia and the sanctuary's team, blending traditional knowledge with modern conservation, their efforts a delicate dance between healing the land and honoring its wild heart. Baraku watched over them all, a silent sentinel, his eyes reflecting the complex tapestry of life he had fought so hard to protect. One afternoon, Tembo approached Baraku with a quiet determination, offering him a garland woven from wildflowers, a symbol of respect and gratitude that bridged the divide between man and beast. Baraku lowered his massive head, accepting the gesture with a slow blink that spoke volumes. In the weeks that followed, stories of Baraka's courage and compassion spread beyond the sanctuary's borders, inspiring communities to rethink their relationship with the wild. Children painted murals of the mighty buffalo, poets wrote verses about his journey, and elders spoke of him as a guardian spirit who had taught them the true meaning of strength. Yet the buffalo's greatest gift was the lesson he embodied, that love could transcend boundaries, that mercy was the mightiest force of all, and that even in a world scarred by loss and cruelty, hope could flourish like a stubborn bloom pushing through cracked earth. As the sun set on the horizon, casting a golden glow over the sanctuary, Baraka stood beneath the baobabs, the calf now grown and strong beside him, and for a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath, a quiet tribute to a heart that had beaten fiercely against the odds, forever changing the land and those who called it home. Stay with us for the next chapter, where the legacy of Baraka unfolds, and the bonds forged in hardship illuminate a path toward harmony between humans and the wild. ChatGPT. As seasons turned and the sanctuary thrived under a fragile peace, Baraka's presence became more than just a symbol. He became a living bridge between the wild and the human world, embodying the fragile hope of coexistence in a land long marred by conflict and neglect. His massive frame moved with a newfound grace, each step a quiet testament to survival and resilience, the calf who had once limped behind him now a robust bull in his own right, walking with pride beneath the vast sky. The sanctuary's boundaries stretched like a promise, fenced yet free, a place where animals could roam without fear of traps or gunfire, and where the whispers of the wild could be heard without interruption. Yet beyond the fence, the world remained turbulent. Poachers still prowled the edges, driven by desperation or greed, and local communities wrestled with the cost of preserving wilderness against the pull of progress and survival. Baraka's story reached ears far beyond the savannah, voices in distant cities, activists and officials, children inspired by murals and tales, all seeing in him a spark of something larger, the possibility of redemption, the power of compassion to heal wounds both ancient and new. One day, as the sun dipped low, painting the sky in hues of orange and violet, Baraka sensed a change in the air, a subtle shift in the rhythm of the earth beneath his hooves, a whisper in the breeze that carried both promise and warning. The sanctuary's peace was fragile, and the battles for survival far from over. A young ranger named Sephu, newly assigned to the sanctuary, arrived with a mission to strengthen protections and build bridges with neighboring villages, whose distrust of conservation efforts ran deep. Sephu was a man shaped by his own losses, a childhood spent amid the harsh realities of poverty and poaching, a family torn apart by violence, yet he carried within him a fierce determination to protect what remained. Baraka and Sephu's paths crossed beneath the spreading canopy of an ancient fig tree, where the buffalo rested after a long day patrolling the sanctuary's borders. Sephu approached cautiously, his hands open and steady, eyes meeting Baraka's with a mixture of reverence and resolve. Over time, a bond grew between the two, built on mutual respect and an unspoken understanding that true strength came not from domination, but from guardianship. Sephu's presence brought new hope to the sanctuary's team, and with his guidance, efforts to engage local communities blossomed. Education programs, sustainable farming initiatives, and cultural exchanges began to shift attitudes, turning former adversaries into allies. Baraka watched as the land healed, grasses growing tall and green, waterholes teeming with life, and the diverse chorus of animals once again filled the air. Yet the peace was tested anew when news arrived of a poacher's raid just beyond the sanctuary's eastern border. Traps set and animals killed, a stark reminder that darkness lingered at the edges. Baraka, now fully healed and stronger than ever, led a patrol alongside Sephu and Amina, tracing the signs of intrusion with the precision of a seasoned warrior. The tracks led them deep into thorny bushland, where a hidden camp pulsed with cruel intent. The confrontation was swift and fierce, poachers caught off guard by the sanctuary's vigilant defenders. Baraka charged with a thunderous roar, his horns driving into a snare that threatened to claim a young elephant calf nearby. The poachers scattered, but not before a shot rang out, Baraka's flank seared with pain once more. Yet, as before, the buffalo stood tall, unyielding in the face of danger, embodying the spirit of the wild that refused to be broken. The battle sparked a wave of solidarity among local villagers, many of whom had once viewed the sanctuary with suspicion but now saw the strength and heart of its protectors. Together, humans and animals forged a new path, one where survival depended not on conquest, but on harmony. Baraka's story became legend, a tale told around campfires and in schools, a reminder that courage was not just the roar of horns or the clash of hooves, but the quiet choice to protect and to forgive. As twilight settled over the sanctuary, Baraku stood once more beneath the stars, his gaze steady and calm. Beside him, the grown calf, now a leader in his own right, nudged his flank gently, a silent promise of the future they would face together. The buffalo's heart, weathered but unbroken, beat on, a beacon of hope in a world still learning to listen. Join us for the final chapter, where the legacy of Baraku reaches beyond the sanctuary's borders, challenging us all to reconsider what it truly means to be guardians of the wild and of each other. ChatGPT. The dawn broke over the sanctuary like a promise fulfilled, the sky a canvas of soft pinks and golds illuminating the sprawling landscape where Baraku and his herd had found a fragile refuge from the chaos that had once consumed their world. The buffalo, now a towering figure of strength and wisdom, moved slowly through the morning mist, his breath steaming in the cool air, every step resonating with the echoes of battles fought and victories won, not just of survival, but of something far greater, connection. The sanctuary had transformed from a mere place of safety into a living symbol of hope, where animals and humans alike had come to understand that the true power of the wild lay not in dominance or destruction, but in respect and coexistence. Around the watering hole, young calves splashed playfully, their joyous cries a balm to weary hearts, while birds sang melodies that wove through the tall grasses like threads of light. Baraku's gaze swept across this renewed world, settling on the faces of those who had walked this journey with him. Elias, now recovering steadily and teaching local youth the ways of the land. Amina, whose tireless spirit had bridged gaps between cultures and species. Tembo, transformed from a boy into a leader with fire in his eyes. And Sephu, the ranger whose dedication had turned suspicion into alliance. Together, they had forged a sanctuary not just for the buffalo, but for the fragile bond between man and nature. Yet, even as the sun warmed the earth, the lessons of the past whispered in the rustling leaves and the distant calls of wild creatures. Baraku understood that this peace was neither permanent nor easily won, but a precious moment to cherish and protect. That morning, as the group gathered beneath the ancient baobab tree, a living monument to resilience, the air was filled with anticipation. A ceremony was to take place, honoring the journey that had brought them here and the legacy that would carry forward. Children from nearby villages, their faces painted with colors of earth and sky, stepped forward with garlands woven from wildflowers and grasses, offerings to the great buffalo who had become a guardian and a guide. Baraku lowered his massive head in acceptance, a silent vow passing between beast and human that this was only the beginning. Speeches were made, stories told, laughter and tears mingled as the community celebrated the unbreakable spirit of the wild and the shared responsibility to nurture it. Among the crowd, old skeptics found new respect, and young hearts kindled a fire of stewardship that promised to burn bright for generations. As twilight deepened into night, the campfire flickered and danced, casting long shadows that seemed to tell their own tales of courage and compassion. Baraku stood at the edge of the gathering, his eyes reflecting the stars, a bridge between the earth and the heavens, between the past and the future. His thoughts drifted to the battles fought, the poachers driven away, the floods weathered, the hyenas chased off, not as mere struggles, but as chapters in a story of profound transformation. The buffalo who had once charged with fury now walked with purpose, teaching those who would listen that true strength was found not in conflict, but in connection. As the fire burned low, Elias approached and placed a gentle hand on Baraku's broad shoulder, a gesture of gratitude and kinship that transcended words. Nearby, Tembo and Amina spoke quietly of plans to expand the sanctuary, to create corridors for migration and education centers that would carry the message of coexistence far beyond these borders. Sephu looked up at the sky, feeling the weight and wonder of the journey, a path paved by sacrifice, courage, and unwavering hope. And Baraku, the mighty buffalo with a heart as vast as the plains, stood resolute, a living testament that love, loyalty, and sacrifice could rewrite the destiny of worlds, human and wild alike. The stars shone brighter that night, as if celebrating the story of a creature who dared to be more than instinct, who chose to protect, to forgive, and to inspire. And in that luminous moment, every soul present knew they had witnessed something extraordinary, the true heart beneath the horns. What moments in your life have revealed the power of courage, compassion, and connection? Share this story, carry its lessons, and remember that the wild lives within us all, waiting to be nurtured with love and respect. ChatGPT.